Hello everybody, welcome back to Commonwealth Flipper, October 5th. What is that, a Friday? It is almost here, and I've got a lot to say. I think people need to not just look at the micro picture of what's going to happen, and you need to do that too, and we're going to do that today, but look at the macro picture so you can start to strategize into the future to keep your reselling business profitable. And there's two dogs in here. You guys never look at the macro picture. You're only looking at the micro. That's it. That's all you care about. Where's my treat? If you haven't figured it out, I'm talking about the postal increases. And a lot of YouTubers come out with these videos a little bit sooner than I do. I typically come out a little bit later. I want to digest a few things and get a few opinions before I shape what I'm thinking. And what I've always thought, I'm starting to shift. I've shifted on shipping many times in the past because of different things that are happening. And I'm starting to move back a little bit in another direction, but I'm not going to go there yet. You know, I sold a cassette. I hate putting the sealed ones in here because I don't ever. Sometimes there's something different about one of these little slots, and I don't want to mess up the sealed cassettes, but these were good. So I bought a bunch of sealed cassettes the other day on Dibdit.com's media raid train, and I'm selling a few and I'm keeping a few. And I'm going to pay for the ones I'm keeping, plus make a little profit. So this is Christopher Cross, y'all. I love. This is like so typical 80s to me. Although, was it 1980? It says 79. I swear it was 1980. At any rate, Christopher Cross, they've got sailing on this one. It's on side 2, if I recall. Third song on side 2. $15.95. plus shipping for that one. And sales have been pretty darn good for us. You'll see it over the next few days. Matter of fact, I'm probably going to have to film 3 straight days, which is something I don't always do. But that's a good problem, I suppose. And I know people have ups and downs out there. But this is something that's been pressing for a while. I'm going to read the news. I know you've heard of this before from some other folks, and it happens every year. I'm going to read through it really quickly. We've had a lot of new subscribers, and I'll skip some parts. Then I want to get into the analysis. I love reading between the lines and seeing things that may shape what we do in the future, not just in the immediate, Q4 kind of universe here. Washington, the U.S. Postal Service filed notice today with the Postal Regulator PRC, which I think is ironic, regarding a temporary price change for some package services for the 2025 peak holiday season. This temporary price adjustment is to help cover extra handling costs to ensure a successful peak season. And y'all, I've met, this is not a slam against postal employees whatsoever. I know so many now, and I've met so many that are just amazing hard workers. But, you always got to read between the lines. Look, they're trying to make more money in a time period where they're spending more money. Let's just face it, it is what it is. That doesn't mean it's going to be a successful season. I sure hope so, because we've had some bad ones in the past and some better ones. Last year wasn't the best, but it absolutely wasn't the worst either. It's a Harley-Davidson helmet, and I don't sell many Harley helmets. I don't sell many helmets. I just don't like to do it, but this one was pretty clean and in good shape. $39.95 for that one, plus shipping. Let me tell you, I feel for some of you postal employees out there this time of year. It is rough, and dealing with the public, people like me and my dad. Let me tell you, the folks we got down there working at this local one now are just terrific compared to the way it used to be. I appreciate them so much. So anyway, the planned peak season pricing, which was approved by the governors on August 7th, would affect prices on the following retail and commercial domestic competitive parcels. That's, retail versus commercial is really key, because these big companies, these big reselling platforms, we're not paying retail prices. Now, depending on how you set yours up, the buyer may be paying that, and that's an issue we'll talk about here. Priority Mail, USPS Ground Advantage, and Parcel Select, no other products or services would be affected. Pending, meaning they're not raising the stamp price or whatever. Pending favorable review by the PRC, the temporary rates would go into effect at midnight Central, October 5th, and remain in place until midnight Central on January 18th. And so it's like, wow, January 18th, the season is over, right? But then you'll have the return season as well. And so I guess that's why they continue it on. This seasonal adjustment will bring prices for the Postal Service's retail and commercial customers in line with competitive practices. Isn't it amazing how you buy something and like 2.5 years later you buy a ton of something and there's still, I pulled this out the other day because I knew it sold, or yesterday I should say. This right here is the very last one of the cars that from that one buyout that we had, and I made a bunch of money on it, but this one just would not sell. And it did finally on a 30% off sale. This little pack right here sold for $20.30, and this was one of the last of these lots, and we had got pretty good money for a while. I don't know why this one didn't sell, but Dirt Tracks gift pack. Not bad. $20.30 plus shipping. So we'll get to the numbers in a minute with some analysis and some thoughts that I'm having, and I want to get your feedback as well. And a lot of this stuff, I don't want to rehash it because people do the same things, right? And some people in the comments will be like, so what, you know, same thing, this is what you do, whatever. I get it, but there are a few things in here that if you read between the lines might need to affect people in a slightly different way. Some people, including me. And it might not affect people in a different way because they've got calculated shipping on, for instance, whatever. We'll get to it in a minute. As a strategic part of delivering for America, a 10-year plan, these temporary changes will support temporary. They should put quotation marks around that, really. Come on. Because what happens every year is they get implemented a little bit later as soon as they are taken off, and then they're put back on, and it's kind of a game. But whatever, you get the point. Temporary changes will support the Postal Service in creating a revitalized organization capable of achieving our public service mission, providing a nationwide integrated network for delivery of mail and packages at least 6 days a week in a cost-effective and financially sustainable manner over the long term, just as the U.S. Congress has intended. The planned price changes include, and that's what we'll get to in a second. So another Tomy slot car. It's been about a week or so since we sold one of these. And I think I see it right here. I will pull it out. Wait a minute, that might not be it. I thought I saw it. Here it is right here. This little slot car right there, that one sold for $24.65 plus shipping. So right off the bat, I saw something that made me think a little bit. And this is what I think is applicable to some folks. But let's just start with it here. Retail prices. Priority mail, meaning what it would actually cost if somebody was buying using calculated shipping on eBay, or if you went to the post office and shipped something yourself. 40 cents increase for zones 1 to 4 up to 3 pounds. So an item up to 3 pounds, whether it's priority mail or USPS Ground Advantage, is going up 40 cents. If it's zones 1 through 4. So all of these next ones I'm reading are applicable to priority mail and USPS Ground Advantage for these weight ranges, right? And of course there's size things too that matter, but we're just keeping it simple. This is under a cubic foot. So 0 to 3 pounds, you're going to see for priority mail and USPS Ground Advantage a 40 cent increase retail. 60 cents for 4 to 10 pounds, and 95 cents for 11 to 25 pounds. And then a massive jump, 26 to 70 pounds, $3 increase for zones 1 through 4. So all these are zones 1 through 4. So I'm like, okay, so what are the increases for priority mail and USPS Ground Advantage for zones 5 through 9? And I immediately saw two different scales. So I thought to myself, okay, so on items that are close by, somewhat close by, zone 1 zone to 4 zones away from your zone, there's a uniform price increase regardless if it's priority mail or USPS Ground Advantage. But from zones 9 to 5, they're going to have increases that are different for priority mail and USPS Ground Advantage. And it may not be that big of a deal when it comes to the bottom line. It is a big deal in my opinion because every little penny counts. But it is a big deal if you're looking at it as to what are they looking at in the future. How are they viewing this? And that's what I want to get into. And that's kind of what I mean by the micro versus the macro. Of course, we have to make changes. And depending on how you do shipping right now, you know, your changes may be different. And I've said in the past that sometimes I don't even make changes. And people are like, what? I don't get it. Now I'm confused. I'm looking at smaller cups. There they are, right there. Right here. These are the ones that sold. I bought 2 little sets of Tupperware for $2 total. This was one of them, and the other one sold, I think, for $12.95. So this sold for a little under 10. So you basically get $23 in sales for $2, two sales. It's not huge, but I love Tupperware. I mean, I'm going to make 15 bucks on these two, and it was super easy and they sold super quick. By the way, I always find that full, I tend to sell a little bit more Tupperware. $9.45 is all I got for that one, but like I said, I'm into it for $1. You know, I'll make like $5 on it. Before I read those two other scales, I guess it's just, I've said it before, so I don't really need to say it, but I do flat rate shipping. So typically what I do when these changes occur is I really don't make changes right off the bat, because it's a way for me to clear out older inventory by having a slightly better price automatically without touching a button. And then I change it a little bit later. I think in this case, because I didn't make any changes to my shipping at all with the last change. And I know that's crazy to a bunch of people, but I was in a situation where I needed to get stuff sold, and I thought, you know what, let's just ride this thing out to the next one. So this one, I'm going to make some changes. And I use flat rate shipping, so I just simply choose. I do it differently than a lot of people. I just go in there and I put a price. Like my lowest shipping cost is $4.49. At this point, I don't even think you can ship anything hardly for that. So $4.49, then I pick $4.99, $5.99, $6.99, $8.99, $9.99. I need to add another one at like $11.99. And then I just have these flat shipping rate policies. And when I look at an item, like, I don't know, this right here. This is some Bart Simpson's cards. It's kind of heavy, but it's super small. I might just put $6.99 shipping on it. Or I might put $8.99 shipping on it. Just depends. And I can make that change in my business without having to adjust anything. In other words, it's like in my mind, I know that shipping costs are going up a little bit. So in the past, if I would have done $6.99 on that, maybe now I'll do $8.99 on it. Maybe I'll put a new one in there at $7.99. And so when I have options, I don't have to put in the weight and the measurements or any of that. I just pick a price, and that's the price that's going to go on it. And people are like, I just can't grasp it, you know, because you don't know where that's going. And I'm like, I know, I get it. But if you buy right, a matter of $1 or $2 isn't going to cause you not to take a sale. And so that's the way I think of it. Now, I'm not saying this is the right thing for everybody. People live in different spots and different places around the country. They have different circumstances, but that's just how I do it. So in reality, I don't have to really do any changes to my old listings if I don't want to. I can go in and change those policies, like that $4.49 one, for instance. I can make it $4.89 or something like that. And then everything that's already listed with that set price automatically jumps up. I could do it that way. Probably what I'll do, because I don't want old inventory sitting around, is I'll probably just start putting the newer items that I list at a little bit higher shipping price without really changing anything. And I used to have titles on my shipping that was like 0 to 4 ounces or 4 to 8. I just put the price now and pick it. All right, here's a good example, because I don't always make money on shipping. Sometimes I lose money on the shipping portion, but I don't care because I'm making money. I paid $1 for this guy right here. This is a huge, giant little jellyfish paperweight. And this one sold for $27.55. When I listed it, I didn't weigh it, I didn't measure it, I didn't do anything. I just simply chose $8.99 shipping on that. And if it was shipped around here, I would make money on the shipping. But this one's going to Minnesota, which is not the worst case scenario, but it's going to Minnesota. And it's going to cost me $8.82 to ship that, and I charged $8.99 on that one. You might think, oh, well, you're making money. No, if you know eBay, you know you're not making money because you're paying fees on the shipping portion. And so I'm going to lose, plus I got to get a box and whatever. I'm going to lose like $1.25, $1.50, maybe a little bit more on this item right there. But I paid $1 for it. It sold for $27.95. So you add all those fees in there. I'm making $20 on this deal. Easily. So did it really matter what the shipping price was? It could have been worse. It could have been better. But in my mind, I'm paying attention to it. I'm like, okay, I charged $8.99 for that, and it's $8.82 is what I'm paying, and it's not the California, it's the Minnesota, so it could be worse. So now in my mind, when I look at an item like that, when I list it, I'm going to put $9.99 on that thing as a minimum. And so that's what I mean by making the changes on the newer items, but leaving the old items the same to get them sold. So That's my method. I'm not saying it's the right method, but I can tell you right now, when I read you these next charts right here, you'll see that might be a little bit more risky if this trend keeps going in the direction that it's going. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. And I don't want to make this about a debate about free shipping versus calculated shipping versus flat rate, choose it like I do. But some of this stuff kind of is important when you're talking about what I'm going to talk about right here. I'll just say this, and this might surprise a lot of us kind of mom and pop sellers out there. Most people in this audience charge shipping. But I would say that 60-70% of the items that are listed on eBay, when you look at multi-quantity and bigger businesses, probably closer to 70% of them are listed free shipping. And if you comp stuff, you see that all the time. And yeah, people can argue there's really no such thing as free shipping or whatever. You're exactly right. It's either baked in some way, shape, or form, or you're using calculated. And a lot of people I know, and this is a perfectly great option, and I may go to it one day, especially when I read these, is to do calculated shipping and to return all of the retail excess charge to the buyer, or maybe a portion of it, and build that into your price and whatever, and that may be the most beneficial way to do it. I don't do it for multiple reasons, but one in particular is I don't want to weigh stuff and measure it. I don't want to do it. I just want to pick the price based on experience of a typical size of an item. It's way faster, and I will make more money even if I lose a little bit here and a little bit there and it's not perfect, because of the speed I'm getting items up at. Plus, I'm doing List Easier at this point, and you got to have business policies put in place, and you can't do the calculated shipping like that. But it didn't matter for me because I was already doing it. I honestly think that this is the way to go for multiple reasons, in spite of what I'm going to read you here in a second. And just looking at what Poshmark is doing is convincing me, even though these things right here are kind of arguing against it. So priority mail zone 5 through 9. So this is just priority. The priority price for zone 5 through 9 up to 3 pounds is going up 90 cents. That's not nothing. 4 to 10 pounds, 1.45 cents going up, zones 5 through 9. Once we get into this, I think it's somewhat irrelevant, because this is stuff that almost all the time is going UPS for me or FedEx. But $3.25 for 11 to 25 pounds. It's hard to get 26 to 70 pounds in a 1 cubic foot box, but $7 increase. So huge increases for zones 9 through 5 if you're using priority mail. I shouldn't even say almost. I never use priority mail anymore. Then you jump down and look at the USPS Ground Advantage prices for zones 5 through 9. Now remember, for zones 1 through 4, everything was uniform, priority and Ground Advantage. But for 5 through 9, you're having some disparities here. And I think this should inform us a little bit here. USPS Ground Advantage, 50 cents. It's going up for 0 to 3 pounds. So it's 90 cents. So it's 40 more cents priority mail. So that to me is telling me a couple things. And then it goes on, right? $1, it's going up $1 for Ground Advantage versus $1.45 for priority mail for zones 9 through 5, 4 to 10 pounds. $2 increase for 11 to 25 pounds versus a $3.25 increase. So this is telling me something here. They don't want to ship as much priority mail as they have in the past. They just simply don't want to do it. And increasing the USPS Ground Advantage, the whole operation, they've probably invested a ton of money in that. They've got away from, flying things, whatever. My guess is they're moving more and more and more towards that. That's what they want to do. They'll probably keep that service, but it will be increasingly more expensive. And that's perfectly fine with me, to be perfectly honest with you, because I just don't use it anymore, and the customers are kind of used to it. And, they order something and it comes in 4 or 5 days. Who cares? They don't care. So I've already said I like my system, and I'm not going to change, but you got to be honest with yourself, and you can't be so, like I said in the past, can't be dogmatic about how you do things, because now this disparity for even Ground Advantage going to farther away places is even bigger than it's been in the past, and you got to hedge your bets. Because let's face it, let me show you what these sold for. These sold on clearance. They're Harley-Davidson pewter ornaments. I'm not going to open them up. They sold for $15.37. plus shipping. So let's face it, when you do shipping the way I do it, it's a gamble. It's a, you know, you win some, you lose some, but in the end, you're going to be okay. You're going to make enough money to cover your shipping costs, or, you know, even if you're doing free shipping, you've got to price your items keeping shipping in mind, because you got to ship the dumb thing. So for me, now, when I choose these prices, I might start sliding up and being like, okay, because there's a bigger risk now than there was in the past if the thing's going to California or Washington or Oregon or Montana or Hawaii or wherever it is, because these zones are farther away and there's a bigger difference. So I'm not going to ignore that fact. And the only thing you can do if you continue to use what I'm using, and I'm going to continue to, is to bump that shipping price up a little bit, which means that people that are closer to you are going to pay a little bit more. You're going to make a little bit more on that, not crazy amounts. And some people simply don't want to do that. They would like to, and I used to make this argument all the time. It's a good, solid argument. It just takes a little bit more time this way. Is that they want to sell things to people closer by, especially bigger things, because it mitigates their risk of return and the cost of shipping and return and all kinds. So there's good arguments on both sides. I'm definitely not saying that there's not. I think you can do, I'll say this, I've said it 100 times. You can do free shipping and make money. You can do flat rate shipping like I do. You can do calculated shipping and make money. But if I take all things into consideration, I'm going to continue to do it this way because it's best for my business. All right, we got Turner in here. He's going to do Reagan's job because she's gone today, but I'm going to keep talking about this. There's 3 reasons why I'm going to stick with what I'm doing in spite of the numbers starting to trend in the other direction. This is a silk made in China, made in Shanghai, China. 38 vintage little blouse, I guess. $27.97. I don't even really want to put it down. I'll get a hanger plus shipping. Turner's kicking the dog out of the chair. Would you reach behind you right there and grab a hat out of there? That is what's sold. Do you remember the name I just told you?
Rodney.
Rodney just bought a Commonwealth Picker hat from CommonwealthPicker.com. What y'all doing? So Rodney, thank you very, very much for that. Rodney. Can you remember Reagan's line?
Don't forget to get your sticker at CommonwealthPicker.com.
Show him your cast, y'all. Yeah. Yep, he still won't go play. He still won't put that in a glove. Thanks, bud.
Bye.
So I'm not trying to convince you that this is the best way to do it. I'm just trying to say that this is the thought process. When you read these things, you got to pay attention and you got to adjust the way you're doing things to that. But you also got to look into the future and think, you know, maybe I will go calculated and return all, you know, I'm not going to do calculated retail. It just cuts off your market way too much. But I know people that do it and do just fine. So for me, there are 3 reasons why I'm going to continue to do this and make an adjustment. The adjustment will be, instead of picking, you know, $4.99 for something that I used to pick $4.99 for, now I'm going to pick $5.99. And it's going to work out just fine for me. But there are 3 reasons why I'm going to continue to do it the same style that I do it already. One is convenience. I already mentioned it. I don't have to enter. I don't have to weigh anything. I just kind of guess. And it's a very educated guess, but it is still a guess. And there will be some that I lose on and some that I win on. And then the other thing I mentioned as well, because I want to use some of these AI features and list easier, and you got to have business policies, and it just makes it so much easier to do it this way. And then there's a 3rd reason. Hey, Pepper. Technically, there are 4, and the 4th one is the one I want to talk about. So I'll mention the 3rd one really quick after this sale. This one, I would not have picked this up. It was part of my Mike Deathpile Picker buyout. It is cool looking. I love it. But this is the kind of stuff for not an extremely high sell-through rate item. But this one's not terrible. And an item this size and a low ASP, average sales price, this is not really where I want to be at $24.95, because the risk on the shipping end makes it a little bit rough. So, but I'm not sure where this is going. I'm sure I'll do okay on it, and I'll make money for darn sure, because I've already made money on that buyout already. So this is a, what's this called? Regal Poly Perk. I like those little small Regal ones, but that's got a great look to it, and somebody will use that for sure. $24.95 plus shipping. So really quickly, the 3rd of the 4 reasons before I get to talk about the 4th one is that people do, and we know what shipping costs. We see it. We do this. It's our job. There's a lot of people out there that are still in sticker shock. they go to the post office like, you've got to be kidding me, right? Or they see the shipping charge on somebody who's using calculated shipping on eBay and they happen to live on the other side of the country. They don't process this stuff. They're like, this person's trying to rip me off. It's like, I'm not trying to rip you off. Shipping's expensive. And you kind of cut your market off if those people are completely out of the loop. And I don't like to do that. I like to have a much bigger market, even if I'm making a smaller margins on some of those items that end up going to the other coast. Now, California, all you West Coast people are in a different situation for sure. Most of the population of the United States is east of the Mississippi. And so you're really cutting off your market if you do that. However, it's also really expensive to ship to them. So you got to balance all these things out and make the right decision for you. But I'm going to get to the fourth. And this is the bigger macro trend that I think, I'm not 100% sure of this because this data shows slightly different, but I'm pretty certain that the big macro shift is going to go to a simpler system for a lot of these marketplaces. Uh-oh, the dogs took Turner's ball, I think. This next buy wasn't my best, but it's still going to make me some money, I suppose. These Boy Scouts of America, I think they were $1 up. Maybe they were 50 cents. In that case, it wasn't a bad buy at all, but maybe they were $1. I can't remember. And there were 5 of them at an estate sale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I was like, I saw some comps. I'm like, yeah, I think it'll do okay. Bookmark, Boy Scouts of America, and letter opener. And I saw some comps out there in the 20s, but it never sold, so it got put on discount. $17.46 plus shipping. So 5 into $17.46 is not the best flip in the world, but definitely still not bad. And we'll make some money on it. All right, it took me a long time to get here, but I'm finally here. So the fourth reason is I just see the macro trends being simplified. Just look at what Poshmark has done. Look at how different platforms are already operating, and they've made the shift to ground advantage. Poshmark made that shift. Whatnot still hasn't in some cases, and some things they have. That's why I love Dibbed It, where it doesn't matter. I can just ship it however I want to, and I can choose the flat rate, so everything's easy for me. But some people over there use calculated and stuff, and I still think that's a mistake. But, do what you want. So I think the macro trend is moving big time towards USPS ground advantage. I just don't think the post office wants to deal in priority mail and flying things around and whatever. And I don't know that they'll ever completely go there. They probably won't. But the fact that they're making these USPS ground advantage boxes for Poshmark and they're setting a flat rate, it's not impossible to figure out what price. I've heard so many people say lately, like, how can they afford it? I think Death Pile Picker said it on his thing. He's like, it doesn't make financial sense. It doesn't. It does. It does. Because of ease of use. And a lot of people, sellers for instance, and a lot of people who sell on Poshmark are casual sellers. Some of them aren't. Most of them aren't, but some of them are, obviously. And so, consumer to consumer selling. And so, yes, how can you ship a box, a 5-pound box, to anywhere in the country and only charge $6, whatever they're charging? They're going to lose money on. No. Basically, what they've done here is look at the whole picture. You can get this data. How much is the average USPS Ground Advantage package under 5 pounds going for? What is the average? And once you have that number, you set your price right there. And you can then adjust off of those averages. Now, I don't have that data, but I'm sure there's really, really smart people who do have that data. I'm thinking maybe in the future, eBay may go to this model, or at least give it as an option. I really, really think that's possible. And I certainly think the USPS Ground Advantage boxes are going to be a game changer for quite a few people as well. Just like the priority mail stuff in the past. But in reality, even with these price increases, we are basically getting what we used to pay for priority mail. We're now paying for USPS Ground Advantage. We've gone that far already in this short amount of time. And getting less of a service. Turner wants something. All right, turns out he didn't want anything at all. He just wanted to save you from the dogs. Huh. That's what he wanted. I'll get you a treat. It is not impossible to set flat rates, even for yourself, and be at a place where you're comfortable at. And so if it's not impossible for me to do it, it's certainly impossible for some of these platforms to do it. I honestly think it might be going there. The simplicity of the operation may be a huge benefit for us in the future. Can you imagine if the post office, and I don't know that they'd ever do this, but It would be amazing if the post office did. This is a Hoyt hat. Never seen one before, but I grabbed it. And this one sold for $14.95 plus shipping. Can you imagine if the post office went to... They used to have the regional rate boxes. Remember that? It's one of my best performing videos for years, and it's completely irrelevant at this point. And it seems weird because it's like, you mean you're charging me the same amount of money to ship it, if they did this, to ship it to, you know, 2,000 miles away as if you're charging me to ship it to my neighbor, right? I honestly think they could possibly do something, and I don't know that they're going to go here, but I definitely think that the platforms themselves could do there. They would have their little dollar cost average over time, and they could do these calculations and they could do it. But can you imagine if the post office did it? Where if it's if you drop it off at a post office and it's in that particular area, then it costs this amount, but everything else outside of the area costs the exact same amount of money. And it might be a little bit more. It's basically what I'm talking about doing for myself. It would be so simple. All the people that have the questions about shipping and how to do that, it's just like everything's flat rate. And you just do it. I think it would be interesting. I don't hold out much hope. But I do think that these platforms may very well move to this model. I mean, Poshmark already has been doing it, right? And I think that this is something that is possible in the future. We'll see. Regardless of all my pontificating here, I love to think about this stuff. I think this is the right one. Let me know what you're going to do out there with these changes, and it could be as mundane as nothing. I'm not going to do anything. I hear that a lot because I have calculated shipping, whatever. This is some Kodak photo paper. This one sold for $20, $19.99 plus shipping. By the way, I always hear, you know, this is a cop-out and you won't even take a stand on this stuff and whatever. I'm like, no. Every time I have come close to taking a stand, people tell me, they're like, hey, you know, intelligent people, this is why I do it the way I do it. This is where I live. This is my circumstances. And I read them and I'm like, that makes perfect sense. Perfect sense completely. Star Wars, The Truce at Baccarat, and Heir to the Empire Micro Machines. These sold for $18.95 plus shipping. I just realized some Harley ornaments earlier went to Susan. Love to watch your picking videos. Very limited shopping at yard sales and estate sales down here in Key West. No doubt. See, there's another, think about Key West, Florida, you know, and shipping that out of there. There's different thought process that goes to stuff like that, I suppose. Anyway, I appreciate the sale. I may have mentioned this before, but my great-grandmother was Cuban. Met my great-grandfather down in Key West, Florida. We have some pictures of them. He was in the Merchant Marine, and she had come over, I don't know how long before, from Cuba. Her name was Hilda Pauline Rosendo. That's where I got my height from. Thank you. To Nana. We called her Nana. Remember growing up in Southern California, they lived in San Pedro, and I remember going down there as a real little boy, visiting her and my great-grandfather, and he passed away, and then she passed, and she was in Arizona at the time. I remember her watching the Beverly Hillbillies. I was hoping this was where I put this, and it is. And with her way back in the 80s before she passed. Jacob Zook. I bought this at a sale while my boy was playing a tournament down in South Carolina. And I thought maybe it'd be around forever, but the price was right, and it sold. It's like easy to ship these, y'all. It's really not that hard. It's too big for a record box, but you just take a box and you could cut it out in the pattern. You could draw on it. You could set that down and like draw it, and then make two little pieces of cardboard slightly larger than this. Tape all of the sides and just ship it like that, and it would be fine. It would be pretty light and not very big. You still got to measure the length this way and this way, so you might as well just make it a square, I suppose. Anyway, this one sold for $30, $29.95 plus shipping. Two different sales. Next video, I'm going to take you inside and show you the new shipping room. We're almost there. Bitty Baby, this is American Girl, and I don't do consignment very often, but for very, very close friends, I will do it, and as long as there's some parameters to it. And these folks needed it, and that's what we're doing here. Bitty Babies. And this one sold for $34. It's an autumn fun set. And then the other one is a spring fun set, gardening outfit, sold for $36.95 plus shipping. So these have been selling well for us and going pretty quick. We sold a couple of Care Bears. Do you care? No. No Name doesn't care. And we'll have to find something else to put up here. 1 and 2. Sometimes, whoa, I'm sorry. You get scared. Oh my goodness. Sometimes I'll put them up. These, for whatever reason, didn't sell. And I was like, you know what? They need to go. And they sold for 30% off at $19 plus shipping. I've been having lots of sales in that $20 range, 20 to 30, which is great. I'm perfectly fine with the bread and butter. This one's a little bit better, but having a lot of sales, but nothing like really, really top shelf. Maybe I don't have that much that's top shelf anymore. I'm not quite sure. Pennywise lot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This lot, I know nothing about them. Land of the Free, question mark. I probably would not like them at all. $56.05 for that lot, plus shipping. Hey y'all, I wanted to show you something really quick. I got a wonderful little gift. This cool little device, and it'll, well, I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but you can plug this in to an outlet and just use this to turn things on and off instead of pulling things in and out. And it was sent to me by John. Let's see. Metro Mighty Mouse got frogs cells. That was very kind of you, and I don't know where I'm going to use it. I might use it inside. It might be cool. But I like that. Appreciate it. Here's a good example of what we're talking about. So this thing was pretty good size. It's 16 by 16 by 1. And it's going all the way to California. And I charged $9.99 for it. And it cost $9.39. So I'm actually losing a tiny bit of money on that. If it would have been closer, I would have made a little bit of money. It's just, you know, you win some, you lose some. And that's going out. It's pretty cheap. Side note, I could have chosen FedEx and it would have been $8.81. So a savings of, you know, 60 cents or so. But I'm not doing that because I've had so much trouble with FedEx lately. So for only 60 cents, I'm going to send this through the post office. So I hope you can weather the shipping storm out there, and who knows where we're going. It's, you know, it is what it is. I mean, I hate to say it, but we can only do so much, but we can make wise decisions for our business. And honestly, y'all, there is nobody who knows your business better than you, but I would encourage people to always stay open-minded. You know, when I started doing this channel years ago, I did things way different than I do now. And don't I? Yeah, I do. And I'm sure I'll do things differently in the future. You just got to constantly, you don't have to make all the changes. You don't have to look at the new shiny object. You know, like I said, with a lot of these people with List Easier, some people are doing it, some people aren't doing it. Some people may do it in the future. Some people may stop doing it in the future. You got to constantly make good decisions for your business. And anyway, I just appreciate y'all very, very much for stopping by as always. And I can't wait to see you next time.